don't understand how this place really works. We've been doing this long before you showed up.
Please lower your voice, Jack.
I've been here 15 years. I know what I'm doing.
Let's get back to the briefing. As I was saying, the reroute window opens at 1400. We'll need coordination with tower.
Jack Taylor had spent 15 years at the airport. He knew every corridor, every gate, every shortcut through the service tunnels that most newcomers never discovered. The smell of jet fuel and coffee had become part of his skin. He'd started as a baggage handler and climbed his way up to senior logistics coordinator, a position that paid him nearly $145,000 a year, a figure he often mentioned when he wanted people to know how valuable he was. At 42, he felt untouchable. He'd survived 3 directors, 2 reorganizations, and countless rounds of layoffs. Jack believed that if anyone kept the airport running, it was him. He was proud, and maybe he'd earned the right to be. But over time, pride turned into entitlement. His name carried weight among the ground staff. They came to him for answers, approvals, shortcuts. He liked that. He liked the nods, the little gestures of respect that made him feel like a king of a small, well-oiled kingdom. The day he heard there was going to be a new director of ground operations, he shrugged it off. Another one, he thought. They came and went. Usually, they relied on him to explain how things really worked. He would give them a month before they started leaning on his experience. He always ended up running things his way again. Then he saw the email. Maya Brooks appointed Director of Ground Operations. The attached photo showed a woman in her late 30s, dark skin, sharp eyes, confident posture. Her resume was impressive. Major regional airport turnaround, efficiency awards, glowing references. Jack glanced at it once and closed the email. He thought, good luck surviving here. Her first day arrived quietly. The staff gathered for introductions. She was calm, professional, and clear about her goals. Streamline operations, modernize systems, improve workplace culture. Jack stood in the back with his arms folded, waiting for her to stumble through her corporate speech like all the others. But she didn't stumble. She spoke with precision, every sentence landing exactly where it should. She mentioned her gratitude to the existing team, her intention to learn before changing anything, and her open-door policy. The room responded with polite applause. Jack remained still. In the following days, she began walking the floor, speaking with staff individually. She took notes on an electronic tablet, asked questions, and listened. To most people, this was refreshing. To Jack, it felt intrusive. He'd built a rhythm at this airport that worked for him, one that didn't need an outsider poking around. He noticed that she didn't defer to him as much as previous directors had. She acknowledged his experience, yes, but she wasn't impressed by it. She wanted measurable results, new training sessions, accountability reports. That rubbed him wrong. He'd always equated authority with seniority. And here was someone younger, newer, and unapologetically assertive. And she happened to be a black woman in a role that had always been filled by older white men. Somewhere deep inside, resentment began to stir.
At first, the resistance was subtle. He'd delay answering her emails. He'd forget to include her on updates. In meetings, he'd interrupt with phrases like, "That's not how things work down here," or "We've been doing this for years." Colleagues noticed the tension, though no one said much. Maya, for her part, remained composed. She countered his objections with data, with calmly presented facts that made him look like he was clinging to the past. Every time she did, his frustration grew. He started to vent to his coworkers, usually in the break room where he thought it was safe. He'd roll his eyes when her name came up. He'd make sarcastic remarks, small ones that carried a sting, hints that she'd only gotten the job because of corporate diversity goals or political correctness. Some of the younger workers felt uncomfortable but didn't dare challenge him. He was senior, respected, the old guard. But word travels fast in closed environments, and soon enough, those words found their way back to her. She didn't confront him immediately. She documented everything instead. Missed training sessions, reports not filed, moments of visible disrespect. When she finally called him into her office, it was after a particularly tense week when a new baggage tracking software had rolled out, and Jack had openly mocked it in front of technicians. She spoke to him professionally, addressing the behavior, outlining expectations. He left the meeting angry, muttering under his breath about how she was power-tripping. That night, he complained to a coworker over a drink, letting slip remarks that weren't just unprofessional, but discriminatory. He thought it was just venting. He didn't realize someone at the table recorded part of it on their phone after the conversation turned ugly. The clip was later sent anonymously to HR. Before any disciplinary action came, Karma started working in smaller, quieter ways. His team began to disengage from him, where once they would ask his advice, now they followed Maya's procedures. The younger staff admired her. They saw in her a new kind of leadership, firm but fair, modern and inclusive. Jack noticed the shift and felt his authority slipping away. He reacted by tightening his control, micromanaging tasks, raising his voice more often. The more he tried to hold on, the more respect he lost. A week later, a mistake happened during a storm delay. Jack was on duty when several flights were redirected. He was supposed to reroute baggage to another terminal, but was distracted, scrolling on his phone and complaining to a coworker about management nonsense. By the time he noticed the error, a truckload of bags had gone to the wrong aircraft. It caused an hour-long delay, thousands in costs, and several angry passengers posting on social media. The report reached upper management within hours. For someone making $145,000 a year, the expectation was near perfection. Instead, they saw carelessness, and attached to his record were already weeks of mistraining and complaints of poor conduct. The HR department called Maya and the vice president for a review. When he was called into the office that Friday morning, he assumed it was another routine debrief. Instead, he was handed a formal performance notice. He was stunned. He argued that one mistake shouldn't define his career, that he'd been the backbone of the department for years. But behind the polite language of improvement plan and accountability metrics, he could sense the truth. They were watching him closely now. From then on, every shift felt like walking on glass. He tried to appear composed, but resentment ate at him. He told anyone who would listen that he was being targeted. He said the new boss had a personal vendetta against him. His words grew reckless, and eventually his anger slipped out where it shouldn't have. In the break room, again, where several people overheard him referred to her in a way that left no room for misinterpretation. It wasn't just disrespect anymore, it was racism, raw and exposed. When HR received multiple written statements describing what he said, the decision was immediate. They didn't even need the old recording. Within 24 hours, a termination meeting was scheduled.
He sat in the conference room, heart pounding. Maya was there, calm as always, alongside the HR director and the vice president. They laid out the documentation, the missed trainings, the inappropriate remarks, the performance issues, the baggage mishap. He barely heard most of it. His mind kept circling the same thought. They're really firing me. 15 years gone in 1 hour. They told him he'd receive standard severance and assistance transitioning if he needed. He was too angry to respond. When he finally stood up, the only thing he managed to say was that they'd regret losing someone like him. No one replied. Walking out of the building that day felt like walking out of a world that had once belonged entirely to him. The security guard at the checkpoint, someone who used to wave at him every morning, simply nodded as he handed over his badge. He could feel eyes on his back, some pitying, others relieved. The hallway that had once echoed with his authority was now just another corridor leading to an exit. He went home to an apartment filled with reminders of his career, plaques, old photos, souvenirs from corporate retreats. He poured a drink and sat in silence. He told himself it was unfair, that it was politics, that she'd set him up. But as the days passed and the anger faded, a quieter truth started to whisper through the noise. He'd done this to himself. He applied for jobs at other airports, confident his experience would carry him. Weeks turned into months. Every interview started well until the topic of his last position came up. There were polite smiles, neutral nods, and later, rejection emails. The aviation community was smaller than he thought. Word spread. Difficult to manage, conflict with leadership, unprofessional remarks. Each phrase cut a little deeper. His savings began to shrink. He sold his second car, downgraded his apartment, canceled vacations. He watched the airport news occasionally, and one evening a local channel ran a short feature about Maya Brooks and her successful modernization program. The new baggage tracking software had reduced mishandled luggage by 30%. Employees' satisfaction was up. She was praised for fostering diversity and respect across teams. Jack muted the TV, but kept staring at her picture on the screen. The irony stung. The system he'd ridiculed now worked better than ever. The department he once controlled was thriving without him. He realized that his downfall wasn't because of her ambition. It was because he couldn't handle change or the idea of answering to someone different from what he expected. One rainy afternoon, he found himself at the airport again, as a passenger this time. He was flying to visit his sister out of state, something he hadn't done in years. The terminal felt different now, colder, unfamiliar. He saw a few old coworkers. Some smiled politely, some looked away. Near his old office, through the glass walls, he caught a glimpse of Maya speaking with staff. The atmosphere looked warm, efficient, cooperative. The sight hit him harder than he expected. He realized she hadn't ruined anything. She had rebuilt what he'd let rot. As he waited by the gate, he thought about the chain of moments that led here. The careless comments, the jokes meant to belittle, the arrogance that made him believe he couldn't be replaced. He remembered her first day when she had said she wanted to learn from everyone, including him. She had offered him partnership, and he'd responded with pride and prejudice. The loss wasn't just his job. It was his reputation, his sense of worth, his own peace.
At his sister's house, over dinner, she asked what really happened. He told her the truth, the whole truth, stripped of excuses. It was the first time he said out loud that he had disrespected someone because of his ego. Saying it didn't fix anything, but it loosened something heavy inside him. He began to understand that karma doesn't always come as lightning or public humiliation. Sometimes it comes as quiet isolation, the slow realization that you've become the villain in your own story. Months passed. He took a temporary contract at a smaller, regional airport, a position far below his old rank and half the pay. It was humbling work, hands-on, long shifts, no corner office. But it forced him to relearn what he'd forgotten. Respect isn't given automatically. It's earned again and again through character. He started showing up early, listening to younger managers, helping without complaint. He didn't brag about his past. He didn't correct people to show he knew better. Slowly he found a rhythm again, not the old kind built on power, but a quieter one built on humility. The job wasn't glamorous, but it felt real. And for the first time in years, he wasn't angry anymore. One morning during a layover at his old airport, he saw Maya again. She was walking through the terminal with the same calm confidence. For a moment, he considered avoiding her, but something inside him urged otherwise. He approached, introduced himself again, and apologized. She accepted it with grace. There was no bitterness in her eyes, no trace of gloating. She thanked him for saying it and wished him well. That moment stayed with him. He realized that while he had spent months thinking about how fast karma came for him, it had also brought something else, perspective. The loss of a $145,000 job had forced him to confront the worst parts of himself, the parts he'd ignored while success protected him. Now, stripped of titles, he understood leadership in a way he never had before. When he left the terminal that day, he stopped to watch a plane taking off. The roar of the engines filled the air. For years, that sound had meant authority, routine, the life he'd built. Now it sounded like something else: renewal, motion, the chance to move forward. He thought about how easily he'd once dismissed someone just because she represented change, because her presence challenged his idea of who should lead. That mistake had cost him everything, but it had also taught him what respect really means. In time, he began mentoring younger staff at his new job. He told them stories, never naming names, never admitting outright that he was the man in them, but each story carried the same message. Arrogance blinds. Prejudice corrodes. Humility rebuilds. The workers listened. Some even looked up to him, not as a powerful figure, but as someone who'd learned the hard way. Years later, he would occasionally see news about Maya's continued success. She'd been promoted again, overseeing operations at a larger hub. He would smile, not bitterly, but with genuine respect. The world had moved on, and so had he. He still remembered the day everything collapsed, the quiet hum of the office as he packed his things, the weight of the silence as he walked out. But he no longer saw it as punishment. It had been a mirror, showing him who he'd become. The fall had stripped away the illusions and left behind something better, someone capable of growth. Karma had come fast, yes, but it had also come fair. And in the end, that was exactly what he needed. Subscribe for more of these stories.